Handouts. Well, here we are. It is Murderous March 2024. I'm very excited. Welcome, everyone. This is our 8th Murderous March. I am Tina DeBellegarde. This is Carol Pulio. We co-chair this event. We are so happy you are here with us for these 2 days. We have terrific panels, workshops, master classes. Our guest of honor this year is the delightful Naomi Hirahara. You won't want to miss her keynote tomorrow morning and an interview Carol and I will be doing with her midday. Today, we're going to begin with a pitch workshop with Karen Odden, and we're very excited about that. Hook them on your book. After Karen, we will have 2 master classes. If you've registered for those, at 2:30 Eastern, Emmy Browning will be presenting her class, Book Autopsies, Getting to the Heart of Your Novel. Very clever. At 4 o'clock Eastern, you can sign on if you've registered for Richie Narvaez and his class on solving the mystery of social media, and it is a mystery to me. If you are registered for these master classes, remember you'll need to sign off this link and sign into your designated master class link. All right, so you will have registered and paid separately for those as opposed to the Friday pitch workshop and the Saturday panels tomorrow. That's all this link. I'm very grateful to Carol Pulio, the immediate past president of our Upper Hudson chapter of Sisters in Crime. Carol is amazing to work with. We spend so much time on the phone, on text, on email. This is all we do all year long. And I want to thank the planning committee for all they've done to make this happen. We could not handle it all. We need this huge planning committee. Everybody's been wonderful. I want to thank Jacqueline Bolden, Amy Patricia Mead, Ellen Higgins, Jennifer Moore, Lita Sedaris, Libby Cudmore, Erica Obi, Janet Vine, Cyril Caslow. I hope I didn't miss anyone. So many people worked really hard on this project. I want to thank Kim Keyline in the background. You can't see her, but she is making all the gears move, and she's making this these Zooms happen for us. So we really couldn't do this without her. A really important message I want to get across to everyone is that on our website and in the chats, you will have links to purchase books. All our moderators, presenters, panelists, masterclass instructors, Karen's books, all of our books will be available for purchase through our hosted it's all hosted through Mysteries on Main Street. So there's a link directly on our website. And for each individual event, Kim in the background will be inserting a link in the chat for books just for that particular event. So Karen's books in particular, if you go to a panel, all the panelists' books for that particular panel, there'll be a link in the chat. So it'll be easy to shop, so shop. And that's about it for me. I want you to enjoy your day. And Carol's going to have a few words for you too.
Okay, thank you. And right back at you. It's a pleasure to work with you. Tina and I should be living together. We spend so much time on Zoom and text and phone and stuff. But I just wanted to say a couple things about our chapter, the Upper Hudson chapter of Sisters in Crime, also known as the Mavens of Mayhem. The chapter hosts this wonderful conference. A lot of you, I noticed, signed up to be members of the chapter around about the time you signed up for this conference. So we're happy to have you, and we're looking forward to getting to know you and to meet you. And if you have not yet signed up to join us as a member of the chapter, you might be interested. We are located in the Albany, New York area. That's the capital region of New York. However, since the pandemic, we live on Zoom. We have a lot of our events as a hybrid. So if you are in the Albany area, certain times of the year, you'd be able to go to the Bethlehem Library in Del Mar to attend in person. But that aside, we're always on Zoom. We've got members now from Washington State, California, Florida, Tennessee, all over the country. So that's been a wonderful thing. We meet on the 3rd Saturday of the month, not this month, because Murderous March takes the place of the March meeting. The membership business meeting is at 10:30 in the morning Eastern time, so figure out your time zones. And then right after that at 11:15, we have an hour program. If you want to try us out without paying the dues, you can come to our programs at no charge. Just go to the website and register for free. Most of the programs for the year are up. We still have a few write-ins to tell you about. And there's a roundtable discussion in May that's not up yet, but it's all arranged. We just haven't posted it yet. So I think that's about it. We're going to wait these 3 minutes because there's usually somebody who comes exactly on time, and we don't want to start Karen's wonderful workshop without everybody. So microwave your coffee, heat it up, grab your tea, get a bottle of water, and we will be back with you in about 3 minutes at 1:15 Eastern.
And you're going to stay on this link because we had a couple of questions.
Yes, and we're all staying on this link. So I'm going to darken my screen so you can look at my latest book cover, and we'll see you in a few minutes. Thanks. Okay. I think we are about ready. Karen, you all set? Okay. It is my pleasure to welcome Karen Odden, who's going to present the Pitch and Query workshop for us. Best-selling author Karen Odden received her PhD in English from NYU and writes mysteries set in 1870s London. Her fourth, Down a Dark River, which I loved, featuring Michael Corrivan, a former thief-turned-Scotland Yard inspector, was an Oprah daily pick. And the sequel, Under a Veiled Moon, 2022, was called Exceptional by Publishers Weekly and nominated for the Agatha, Lefty, and Anthony Awards. Karen serves as the publicity liaison on the National Board for Sisters in Crime and lives in Arizona with her family. Welcome and thank you, Karen, for being with us.
Thank you so much. It is such a pleasure to be here. I loved last year's program, and it's wonderful to be with you all. I want to say a special thank you to both Tina and Carol, who are just phenomenal communicators. I've been involved in different conferences, and sometimes you don't get quite the details or the information or the link or the schedule or the background or anything. And so this has just been really amazing. I also want to give a special shout out to Kim Keyline, who is an absolute wizard when it comes to tech. So she's amazing. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm not great with tech. My kids just laugh at me. They're both teenagers. Okay. Let me see. Can everyone see that? Is that on? Can I hook you on my book? Okay, great. Okay. So before I begin, I want to share a couple things. First of all, I'd like to talk briefly about where the idea for this workshop came from and how it developed. About 4 years ago, Marjorie Flax, who heads Mystery Writers of America, asked me if I would mentor 2 of her emerging writers. They were interested in writing query letters. And I mean, I've received so much help from so many people over the years that, of course, I wanted to pay it back. And I said, of course, I'm happy to help them. And about 5 minutes after I sent back the email, I thought, do I know what I'm doing? Because I mean, I had written a successful query letter, but it had been a few years. And also that had been very particularly mine. It was for my book. And so I think I really just sort of winged it. So when it came to helping other people, though, I decided I would do what we do as writers, right? We research. So I contacted my agent, Josh Getzler of HG Literary New York. I contacted a couple other agents I knew, Michelle Richter and Paula Mounier, and also one other agent who asked to make her contributions anonymously. And so with everything that they told me about what they look for in query letters and in pitches, and what they don't want to see, and what are some red flags, I felt better equipped to help my 2 friends with their query letters. And then I thought, well, why don't I put this together in a workshop? Because I had actually gleaned quite a bit of information. The 4 agents were very frank and very forthcoming. So this is, I kind of distilled it all down, and this is the workshop that resulted. And it's been kind of tweaked and developed a little bit over the years as things change. So that's what you're going to be seeing. I know that some people are going to be pitching agents at the conference, but I think of the query letter as the backbone of the pitching process. And the query letter and the long pitch, like that 10-minute pitch that you do, have a lot in common, a lot of overlap. So we're going to mostly be kind of talking about query letters. Most of it's applicable to the pitches. And then toward the end, I'm also going to be talking about the elevator pitch and the log line, which are 2 other really great tools to have in your toolbox when you're pitching. So without further ado, we will get started. And we will have if everyone's got their worksheet, you don't have to use it, but it's just kind of nice to make notes. We'll be pausing at certain points for you to fill that out. So one of the things that I want to emphasize is that my first round of query letters, I sent out 50 query letters and got nothing back. I mean, sometimes I would get a little slip that said, this is not suitable for us at this time. But I remember what that awful process was like. It could be pretty demoralizing. And the second round, I had a better manuscript and I had a much better query letter. And that time I sent out 10 queries and received about 5, it was either 5 or 6, replies back saying, sure, we'll take a look at what you've got. That ended up with 2 offers of representation, and one of which I chose. So the thing that I did learn is from the agents and from my own experience is that you're looking for an agent, but they're looking for you too. Agents are looking for that amazing submission in their slush pile. They are looking for your unique story, the one that you can tell. And I love this quote from Michelle Richter. I'm always looking for a voice that makes me want to throw everything aside so I can read their manuscript. So I think of there being 4 sections to the query letter or the long pitch. The first is the hook, those first short opening lines. Second, pitch your book. Third, why you and what you bring to the marketing table. And fourth is the short kiss. Let's keep it short and sweet at the end. And we'll be discussing each one of these separately. Now, one of the things to keep in mind is that we've all heard the adage, show, don't tell, when it comes to our fiction writing. Like a good novel, your query letter or long pitch will not only tell, it will show. It will tell why you chose this agent to query, what your book is about, and a little bit about who you are. Sorry, I'm going to actually try to close up. Sorry about this. I'm trying to close up the view. There we go. Sorry. Okay, technical issues. Okay. The long pitch will not only tell, but will show. It will tell why you chose this agent to query, what your book is about, and who you are, but it will also show that both you and your book are ready to be represented. This is your chance to demonstrate your industry knowledge, your skill with words, your understanding of the key elements of a narrative, your awareness of the market and other titles in your genre, and your ability and willingness to be a marketer, salesperson, and champion for your book. So from the first, shape your hook, the first short opening lines. Josh's comment was, make it clear that you have chosen to contact this agent for a specific reason. They do not want to be one of 100 letters that you are just sending out sort of willy-nilly. They want to see that you've done your research, that you know what they are looking for. So one of the questions I often get is, where do I find agents to query in the first place? So one of my first suggestions is to read the acknowledgement pages in the books in your genre that are good comp titles for you. There's usually an acknowledgement page in the back, and the agent is often thanked by name. Second, Query Tracker. This is free. Now, this came out after I wrote my query letter and got my agent, so I have never used this, but I have friends who swear by it. A third place is Publishers Marketplace, and this is the one that I used way back when, in about 2014, I started using it. It is a database of book deals called Deal Reports, and it costs about $25 for a month. It is a good investment. There's the link. And if you want to know what this looks like, I'm going to just show you the one for my book, Down a Dark River. So this is what you see, a deal report, and there are dozens of them every day because the Publishers Marketplace covers everything from children's books, cookbooks, how-to, mysteries, everything. And so you see, you've got the genre, and then you have all of these blue things are clickable. So for those of you who've never seen one of these, author of Victorian crime novels, Karen Odden, I'm clickable. Down a Dark River is clickable. The first book in a series, you've got about a sentence or two about the book. And then you've got Jessica Renheim, who is the editor. Crooked Lane is the publishing house, 2-book deal for publication. Josh Getzler, my agent, and HD Literary is his agency. So all of this stuff is clickable, and you can start thinking, okay, well, I've got a book that's kind of like Down a Dark River. It's set in, say, 1840s London. So I can start clicking around and finding, okay, does this agent handle that kind of book, historical mystery? And this is something that I just learned about last week. So I have no idea how this works, but a friend sent this to me. A new feature in Publishers Marketplace. Recently launched in beta version, there is an AI-powered search system that enables users to find agents who might be a match for their work. Users can input keywords or a few sentences that describe the books. Agent Matcher, which is one of the 2 tools, generates a list of agents who have sold similar books, as well as another batch of titles for further investigation. And then Deal Matcher searches the Deal Reports database and produces names of potential agents and editors. And as always with AI, the usual cautions and disclaimers apply. But you may want to take a look at that. Again, it's been years since I wrote mine, so I just want to share this with you. I have not used it myself. Okay, number 4. Here's another place to find an agent. Have you met an agent at a conference? Watched a YouTube video they've done, seen a presentation they've done to a writers group, followed them on Twitter for 6 months. These are all legitimate reasons for contacting an agent, and they're all things that you can put in that initial hook to explain why you're reaching out to them specifically. Finally, read the agent's blurb. Pay attention to what they like, find out what books they've agented, and read one that sounds close to yours. Don't just take a title and toss it into your hook. So what I'd like to do now, just really briefly, is for a few minutes, we can, on 1A on your worksheet is to brainstorm. If you have seen an agent at a conference or, gotten to know someone or know someone who has an agent that you think you would like to work with, you can jot it down under 1A. I'm going to just give you a minute to do that. Okay, we'll move on. So here's a pro tip. Prepare to meet agents at conferences. There are some great conferences coming up. I don't know if any of you have been to Malice Domestic, Left Coast Crime. Both of those are in April. In the fall, we have Crime Bake and we have BoucherCon. And I know there's some other ones scattered throughout the year, Thriller Fest, Killer Nashville. So if you are going to a conference and you are looking for an agent, stalk professionally and politely. Find out who is going. Usually there is maybe a panel or two where they will have agents there. Sometimes they have a attendance list and you can find out if the agents are coming there. And have your 1-minute pitch and your log line ready to go. And then when you go to write the query letter, you can say, I met you at Malice when when we chatted about my book set in 19th century England. So it's a great way to have something to add into your hook section. Oops. Okay. The next part, shape your hook. One of the things you want to do in those opening lines is to show that you know your genre and its conventions, particularly the typical word count, and that your book is finished, which is implied by having your word count there. You also want to know how to label your book in industry speak. Now, most of us are writing mysteries, so these, I think, are the major subgenres, which you do want to use in that opening hook. Below are some of the other categories, and I want to call attention to one in particular, high concept, because until I started, I think it was probably a couple books in before I understood what high concept meant. So I'm going to go over that real quick. Michelle Richter said, high concept fiction is in demand from editors. High concept is a type of artistic work that can be easily pitched with a succinctly stated premise. It can be contrasted with low concept, which is more concerned with character development and other subtleties that are not as easily summarized. In other words, low content I think of as literary fiction, which tends to be concerned with things like form and things that are a little bit sometimes hard to put your fingers on. Whereas high concept things can be stated with a few sentences or with a few words, sorry. So something like Jurassic Park, amusement park with clone dinosaurs. Titanic, maritime disaster meets Romeo and Juliet. Little Women, 4 sisters come of age in Boston during the Civil War. So what I'd like to do now is just give you a couple minutes. I want you to put down under 1B, what's the title of your manuscript and the word count, if it is finished, and or approximately finished, what you estimate it's going to be, and also what is the genre, subgenre, other industry street markers, and some of the conventions of your genre, including the word count, and is your book high concept? If so, maybe jot that down, see what it is. Okay, I'm going to move on. So when you're shaping your hook, one of the things you want to show is that you can write with specificity, clarity, and intriguing details, because these are valuable in fiction, and you want to be able to show that you're doing that in your novel. So you want to be able to show, this is again another one of these show, don't tell things, show, don't tell. You're going to show that you can do it in your query letter as well. And Josh's note is keep it spare, and you don't have to be funny or overly clever. And then we're going to take a look at some samples that are derived from ones that some of the agents shared with me. So here's a sample. I am familiar with the fact that you are the agent for the cozy mystery Oshkosh Bagosh cakes. My work in progress is a cozy mystery with a protagonist who is a bicyclist investigating 2 murders. Now, there's some good stuff here. We understand that the person definitely knows what their genre is. They've also made a stab at connecting with the agent to explain why they have contacted them, but it does seem a little flimsy, sort of like they went to their website and plucked a title out of nowhere and tossed it in. The other big problem here, aside from the fact that there's not a whole lot of specificity and we know nothing about the protagonist or where this is set or anything, is that it's the person calls it a work in progress. Do not refer to your manuscript as a work in progress. Your work is a manuscript, because no agent is going to want to take you on if you still think your work is a work in progress. They want something as polished as you can make it. Okay, so it's a manuscript. This is better. My 70,000 word cozy, A Game of Scones, is set in a small Midwestern town like your client Annie Lewis's Oshkosh, except that every summer, Hattonfield, Ohio hosts a 100-mile bike race, and this year, 2 cyclists end up dead, both with crumbs from scones on their kits. Okay, 45 words. You want to try and keep it to under 50. And this is nice and tight. This has the word count, which says, okay, the book is actually finished. You've actually completed the novel. A Game of Scones. This is a title that is appropriate for a cozy. It's fun, it's punny. It's got a little bit of sort of zing of humor to it. The person has made it clear that they have at least some knowledge of the agent's client, Annie Lewis, who has set her books in Oshkosh, and has given some specifics. And these are intriguing, right? Hattonfield, Ohio, a 100-mile bike race. 2 cyclists end up dead with crumbs of scones. Also, the use of the word kits is significant here. I am not a cyclist. I have a very good friend who is, and I happen to know that the kit is that kind of multicolored, cool, skin-tight top and shorts thing that the bicyclists wear. And the good thing about tucking in a little bit of cycling jargon is that it lets the agent know that you will be using language specific to that protagonist's world. So that's a really nice thing to slide in there if you can. Does that make sense? So you also know it is, they don't even use the word manuscript here, which is fine. It's good. Okay, here's another example. We met at WriterCon last year, where I told you about my novel set during the French Revolution, and you invited me to query you. Okay, again, great. This person did their homework. They found the agent at the conference. They talked to them. They're using that as their hook. But the word novel is the most generic of genre labels. It doesn't give a whole lot away. During the French Revolution, okay, again, that's a very sort of amorphous term. And there's nothing in here about the title, the word count, and nothing at all about the protagonist or the situation. So this is better. We met last year at WriterCon, where you invited me to query you about my middle grade mystery set in 1789 France, about 3 teenage boys who helped the Scarlet Pimpernel smuggle French aristocrats out of Paris. Edge of the Blade is complete at 50,000 words, and I envision it as the beginning of a series of adventures. Okay, this is going to be effective for several reasons. First of all, this person knows their middle grade genre. 50,000 words is spot on. Also, middle grade adventures tend to have teenage protagonists. So they've got their protagonists tucked in there. They've got an interesting premise. For an agent who is interested, for example, in revisions of classic novels, this would be really intriguing because The Scarlet Pimpernel was a novel by Baroness Orski, written years and years ago. It's also really interesting to me that this person chose to suggest that it is the beginning of a series of adventures, because middle grade readers often do like the same but different, the same but more. Like you think about like the Nancy Drews, Hardy Boys from my era, but also, things like the Mysterious Benedict Society and the series that my daughter was obsessed with. There's one about warrior cats, and then there was another one about a boy who was a spy. So middle grades like that kind of thing, and so you're setting up to be like, okay, I understand that middle grade readers like repetition and they like series, so that's a good suggestion. And again, it's under 50 words. Last one. Like you, I spent time in the banking world in New York, and I've written a thriller I think you might like. A couple things here to notice. First of all, the person has clearly done their research. They found out that this agent used to work in the banking world. That's great. Thriller is a good label. It's not novel. It's very specific. But one of the things is, again, no word count, not a whole lot of specificity here. And also, words are your trade. So don't have those awkward echoes or repetitions like you, and I think you might like. It's just, if you read it out loud, you can hear the echo, and it's not going to be a deal breaker, but it's a little red flag maybe that this person doesn't write maybe as carefully as they could. Like you, I spent time in the banking world in New York, and I've written an 80,000 word taut thriller about a VP of Mills Walker Bank, modeled on Morgan Stanley, who discovers his director is making some shady deals in the energy space. Okay, and again, we're seeing the specificity, the word counts. We have an idea who the protagonist is, what the problem is. And also, again, we're using jargon. My husband used to do M&A on Wall Street, and that's how they talk about deals. They talk about in the energy space, or, in the, car wash space, or in the aeronautics space. That's the way they refer to the industries. So tucking that in there, again, suggests kind of a specificity, an immersion, a way that the reader will be immersed in this world of Wall Street. So I just want to share the reason that you do want to take a look at the agents' websites is they will tell you what they want to see and what they're interested in oftentimes. So this was a successful hook for the novel, my first one, A Lady in the Smoke. And this was from the HG Literary website. Josh is particularly into foreign and historical fiction, both women's fiction, your Downton Abbey, Philippa Gregory mashups, straight ahead historical fiction, think Wolf Hall or The Road to Wellville. He's giving lots of comp titles here, and thrillers and mysteries, The Alien Essay or Donna Leon. So send in your Ruthless Doges and Impious Cardinals and your Farmhouse Cozies. Give him atmosphere. Let him learn something about another time or another place or both, and kill off Uncle Nasty Uncle Mortimer. In the process, Josh will be yours. So from this, you can gather a lot about Josh. He tends to be funny. He's very widely read. He likes historical a lot. He likes to learn something. He likes to feel like he's being put into a world he doesn't know. So this is what I wrote back. Dear Mr. Getzler, I've written a 90,000 word historical mystery set in 1870s London. I don't have any of your Ruthless Doges or Impious Cardinals, but I do have an utterly unscrupulous railway magnate who has just caused a train wreck for financial gain. And this was the letter that got me a read of my full manuscript. So what I'd like you to do now is under 1D, just make a couple notes about specific, unique, evocative, juicy details about your book that you can tuck into that first hook. Oftentimes they will connect to the setting or something interesting about the main character. Okay. So I just want to give one of the rules of thumb that I got from one of the agents. Um, Keep your letter to 350 to 400 words tops. Absolutely do not go over 1 page, because one of the things you're trying to show is that you can write concisely and economically. The first paragraph, the hook, can be effective in fewer than 50 words, as we've seen. Okay, we're going to move on to section 2, pitch your book. This is the body of your letter or your pitch. And there's a few things you want to try and accomplish here. One is describe your protagonist and the trajectory of the main plot and subplot and character arc. Show that you understand the conventions of the genre, again. Demonstrate that you write with specificity, again. And write or speak in a tone and style that reflects the tone and style of your book. Wry humor, intensity, literary imagery, historical accuracy, terse fair prose. You want to think about what you're presenting. What belongs in section 2? I would say that these are the 6 key elements. The first is setting, time and place. Second is the main character with a brief description, 2 to 3 important aspects of the character. What he, she, or they desire most and second most, main plot and subplot. Why it matters, the stakes, what will happen if they don't get it and get it in time. That's the ticking clock. Who's trying to stop him, her, them, the antagonist or threat, and how the main character must learn, change, or grow to get what they want. That is the character arc. And you want to try and do this with the proper tone. And one of the key things is, and Paula Mounier really brought this home, avoid a full plot synopsis. You can just gesture to the ending. No character arc, no story, no sale. She really put a priority on character arc. How does that character grow and change? A character arc and a plot synopsis are not the same thing, and I'm going to show you an example of both. In this first example, we have what I would consider a plot synopsis. Joe Fern moves to a small town in upstate New York for work, where he rents a guest house on the property of an English teacher, Mrs. Wright. One day, he hears screaming from her house, and he goes to the door and knocks, calling out for her. He sees her body on the floor and instantly calls 911. Because he knows CPR, he started that, but she's bled too much from stab wounds in the chest. When the police arrive, they question him, but he can't tell them anything more than he heard some screaming. But then it turns out that one of the teachers at the school where he works owns the red car that is often in the driveway in the afternoons, and he begins to wonder. And soon he realizes that there are things going on at his school, things having to do with a car theft ring and money laundering that Mrs. Wright knew about. And now he knows the killer, science teacher Mrs. Bell, is after him too. Under the guise of flirtation, she lures him on several dates, but on the last one, she brings him to her house and he must use every resource he has to escape and bring the police. Okay, that is a plot synopsis. It does have some specificity to it. The key things that you want, like the setting, we can tell it's contemporary, probably upstate New York. We have a little bit about the main character, but not a whole lot about what he wants and what motivates him, what drives him. We also don't get a sense of his voice, who he is, his attitude. It's also a little tricky to tell from this. Is this a thriller? Is this a cozy? Is this domestic suspense? It's not really following, it doesn't really have a feel of any one genre, subgenre specifically. And one of the things that Michelle Richter made the point is that voice is important. You want to try to write in the voice that's close to your protagonist. I'm always looking for a voice that makes me want to throw everything aside so I can read the manuscript. That was from the very beginning, but I really want to emphasize that she's talking about a voice here. So here is a different version. 50-year-old math teacher Joe Fern has just lost his beloved wife, Anna. And now his small town in upstate New York feels just too darn laden with memories. Besides that, his freezer is so full of casseroles from well-meaning ladies that he's taken to feeding them to the dogs over at the neighboring farm. The casseroles, that is, not the ladies. Okay, so we can already hear the voice of Joe in there. Longing for solitude, Joe moves to a different upstate New York town where he rents a guest house from Mrs. Wright, an English teacher at the high school where he's taken a job. At first, everything seems as orderly as a balanced quadratic equation. The faculty are friendly, and Mrs. Wright seems pleasant enough, though it's clear she enjoys her cocktails. One day, he hears screaming from the house, and he discovers Mrs. Wright dead on the kitchen floor. Despite his reluctance to stick his oar in where it doesn't belong, as his father would say, Joe starts noticing odd things at the school, and he suspects Mrs. Wright was involved in what he soon realizes is a car theft ring with ties to Canada. And when one of his favorite students seems embroiled and in over his head, Joe can't let him flounder. Acknowledging his investment in his community, Joe begins to investigate his fellow teachers, and now the killer is after him too. So here we have a little bit more about Joe. He's a 50-year-old math teacher, just lost his wife. He thinks he wants solitude, but by the end of the book, his character arc is that he realizes he is not the kind of person who does well with solitude. His instinct is to be part of the community, to care about his students, to participate, to try and make things better. We also get a lot of Joe's voice in here, you know, the whole, the casseroles that is not the ladies, that kind of wry humor that he has. And also his attachment to his father, who he remembers fondly and remembers things that he would say, you know, don't stick your oar in where it doesn't belong. So we're getting a lot more of Joe's personality and the character arc here, more than just the kind of, I don't know, but I think of as sort of stodgy details about what he does, what he finds, what he discovers, and so on. So now I would just like you to turn to your worksheet and jot down a few of your notes about your own 6 key elements for your manuscript. I'm going to give you a few minutes to do this. Okay, oops. Okay, we're going to move on to the next section. Okay, one of the last things that you want to include in this, the body pitch part, section 2, let's chat here, are comp titles, comparison titles. And this is Michelle Richter on comp titles. I always, and she put it in all capitals, she wrote this out, want comparison titles or comp authors that make it clear a writer reads within their genre and understands their place on the figurative bookstore shelf. A comp title tells me genre, subgenre, tone, characters, whose readers will want to read it, and what publishers would fit. I am looking for 3 R's in comps: recent, within 3 years, reasonable, not a blockbuster, and relevant. So what I'd like you to do now is just maybe jot down 3 comp titles. And what she's looking for is something that has come out within the last 3 to 5 years. Sometimes it's kind of hard to find a really good fit. And there were some funny stories that kind of emerged out of this. One of them was when an editor said, or an agent said, that someone had compared their book to Gone with the Wind, Harry Potter, Danielle Steele, which is a kind of an oldie, a goodie, but an oldie. There's a couple other really funny ones, but the ones that you want to kind of steer clear of those enormous blockbusters. Don't make huge claims for your book, because as someone kind of hinted in the chat, you want to be positive about your book, but not sort of over the top, like presumptuous, I guess is the word. So just take a minute and maybe jot down a few comp titles for you to include. Okay, we're going to move on to the last of the third section. Section number 3. And this one is about why you and what do you bring to the marketing table. Probably 20 or 30 years ago, publishing houses, it was understood, did the editing, the printing and publishing, and also the marketing. But increasingly, as you probably know, authors are required to do a lot of their own marketing through social media, through bookstore visits, through outreach into their own special communities if they have them. And so one of the things you want to keep in mind is that when you're approaching a potential agent, you want to know that you want to tell them, I'm bringing something to the marketing table. I will be able to help you get the word out about my book. I can be a champion for my book. I can be a liaison to the community. So first of all, explain your relevant experience. Why are you the right person to write this book? For example, in the previous example I gave about the woman who worked on Wall Street for a few years, that matters. That's an important thing to bring up. And also, and if it's not necessarily derived from lived experience or educational experience or work experience, just where did you get the idea? That's often, a good place to sort of begin and kind of get back to, why am I the right person to be writing this book? And why am I a good, why is my experience going to be relevant when it comes to being able to promote the book? Describe or list any publications, membership in professional organizations, anything that will help the agent understand your participation in a community that will be interested in buying this book. And I am going to tell kind of a funny story. when I was about 3 weeks before my first book, A Lady in the Smoke, was going to be published, I received a very nice note from a woman named Anne who had read the book. And her email read something like this, hi, I just want to let you know, I just finished reading A Lady in the Smoke and loved it. I read it on NetGalley. I put my review up on Goodreads, but I won't be able to put it up on Amazon because, of course, you can't do that until pub day. But I've also been looking around for your website and I couldn't find it. Can you help? Sincerely, Anne. Well, the problem was I didn't know what NetGalley was. I didn't know what Goodreads was. This is a long time ago. Keep in mind, this is 2016. I didn't know that you couldn't put reviews up on Amazon until pub day, but Goodreads accepted them earlier. And I didn't have a website, which is the reason she couldn't find it. So one of the things that I always encourage emerging writers to do is before you start sending out all these query letters, make sure you have some sort of appropriate social media or online presence. I think it's a really good idea because they want to know that you have you have a community of practice that you fit into, that you participate in, and that you can reach out to help support your book. Mention if you do a blog or if you have a podcast, list relevant social media, online presence, website, newsletter, book reviews, any engagement with your writing community of practice. That's a really good thing to tuck in. So here's a sample one. As a woman who has worked for 7 years on Wall Street for Morgan Stanley, I'm familiar with both the excitement associated with investment banking and the possibilities for corruption, sexism, and double dealing. I've had 2 stories published in Ellery Queen. I am a member of Mystery Writers of America, and after 4 years of reviewing mysteries on Instagram, I have a following of 2,000. So that's just a sample. So here are some rules of thumb for query letters and for pitches. And you would think that some of these don't need to be said, but the agents assured me that all of them do, in fact, need to be reiterated. Instant turnoffs are bigoted language, sexualized language, stereotyping any group of people, gratuitous sexual violence, and an inappropriate attitude regarding cruelty to children or animals. Now, that is not to say that you can't have cruelty or violence to children or animals in your books. I mean, some of the books, some fantastic novels that I've read do have that. But be careful about how you're framing that in your query letter. Commenting on the agent's or a colleague's appearance, age, birthday, marital status. Stale or dated plots that have already been published many times or many years before. Someone commented that they received about 6 months after Twilight came out, they commented that they had received a query letter for a book about a young woman who had moved to Northern California and met a very sexy vampire. That had obviously already been done. Speaking ill of the industry, traditional publishing, a specific agent or editor, or agents and editors in general. Do not do this. And word counts that don't align with genre conventions. This suggests your manuscript may require a lot of work before it can be shown to editors. So for example, if you say, I have a middle grade book that is 150,000 words long, if you got a fantastic premise, it might not be a deal breaker, but that really is outside the realm for a middle grade book. And finally, keep it short and sweet at the close. A pleasant send-off with your website if you have one, social media if appropriate. Make sure the email that you use to send the query is one that you check regularly. I actually had a friend who created a special mailbox in Gmail for all of her query work, but she forgot to connect it up to her general mailbox and missed a reply. So just make sure you've got all that, all those mechanics in place. I'd be happy to share part or all of my manuscript with you. Thank you for your consideration, blah, blah, blah. So, and some final rules of thumb. Number 1, make sure you check your letter carefully for grammar, spelling, modifiers, and punctuation. These aren't deal breakers, but your writing skill is your stock in trade. Read it out loud because your ear will catch what your eye will miss, and have someone else proofread it for you. Make sure you spell the agent's name correctly. And especially if you're sending out a bunch of letters, make sure you've matched the name to the email and to the proper hook of the letter. Make sure that, if you say, oh, I know that you're the agent for blah, 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 make sure they actually are the agent for whoever it is. Keep the focus on the book. It's not the place for your personal story unless you're writing memoir. Don't use funky fonts. Even if you're writing a Gothic thriller, do not use Gothic type. Stick to 12 point, Times New Roman, or Arial. Gothic is really difficult to read. Don't say dear agent or dear Paul if the agent's name is Paula, or dear Paula Mounier. This screams mail merge. And include the title of your book. Doesn't have to be at the beginning. It can also be at the end, but someplace put the title, because that is another way of showing that your manuscript is finished. Now, the long pitch. This is the verbal pitch. If you've got 5 or 10 minutes with an agent, which I know some of you are going to have at this conference and perhaps at other conferences. These are guidelines. And like all of this is, and I want to just say, all of this is guidelines. People have done things differently and been successful. This is just what the agents told me works for them. And, you know, and again, the long pitch, you know, a lot of this depends on your personal style. But first, establish the personal connection from section 1 of your query letter. Look, why this agent? So when you sit down, you know, with someone, you know, show that you've done a little bit of research about them. Say, hey, I saw that you know, were the agent on this book. You know, that was a book I read, you know, a couple of years ago and really loved. Something personal, some kind of personal connection that has to do with something specific about that agent. Okay, that's the first thing. Next, here's a possibility. Open with a story of where you got the idea. So we're taking a little piece from section 3 and bumping it up. Because this can help create that personal connection and explain why you're the one writing the book and why you want to tell this story. This can take the shape of a personal story, but of course, keep the focus on the book, avoid TMI. Then pitch the book. So basically, you're taking section 2 and you're going to speak it. Most times, once you are finished, in my experience, once you've kind of given that paragraph, most agents will have questions. And I would suggest that you be prepared for them. And one of the ways to do this is to speak your pitch to another writer and see what kind of questions they come up with. So that you're just kind of ready to move into sort of an impromptu, oh, let me explain this, or let me give a little bit more backstory here, or whatever. And to prepare, practice in front of a mirror. I know it's really awkward, but I do it. And how do you make this query letter or long pitch into the 1-minute elevator pitch? Now it's called the elevator pitch. I never knew this because ostensibly you can, you know, if you find yourself locked in an elevator with the agent from floor 8 down to 1 in the hotel, you want to be able to get this pitch out. If they say, oh, you write books, what do you write? You want to have it at your fingertips. And I suggest that you include the 6 key pieces from section 2. Again, setting, main character, what they want, why it matters, who's trying to stop them, and how they must learn or change to get what they want. And I would also, in your 1-minute elevator pitch, be sure to tuck in a mention of the genre and target audience, or even comp titles. You want to aim for 100 to 150 words, 1 minute or less, spoken slowly. Not like if any of you ever saw Big Bang, Sheldon tries to recite his speech and he does it at like lightning speed. Speak slowly and practice until it rolls off your tongue. You want to be able to, it's almost like muscle memory. You want to be able to speak it no matter how nervous you are. It's just going to come flying out of your mouth. And this pitch will tell the potential agent about your book, but it will also show that you prepare, that you're poised, that you know your book intimately, and you understand the important elements that make a successful book tick. So here's a sample, 130 words, 45 seconds. Harry Potter, an orphan boy living with some truly dreadful relatives in modern day England, learns that he's a wizard, and he goes off to his first year at Hogwarts School, hoping to make friends. Humble and shy, he's amazed to learn he is the son of famous wizarding parents and a prime target of the evil, disembodied Lord Voldemort, who enters the body of a teacher to threaten Harry and Hogwarts. Harry must learn to trust his friends Ron and Hermione, so as to vanquish Voldemort's stooge before evil takes over the school and he loses the one place that feels like home. It's the first in a series aimed at middle grade and YA, with Harry's coming of age as the long plot arc. So you've got everything tucked in there. I've kind of bracketed kind of as we go just to show you, but it's all tucked in there. Here's another one. This one's my book, Down a Dark River. In 1878 London, Michael Corvin is a former thief and bare-knuckles boxer from seedy Whitechapel who has become a Scotland Yard inspector. But the Yard had a huge corruption scandal in 1877, a true event, and Parliament wants to shut the division down, so now every investigation counts. Corvin is working a case of a prominent judge's daughter who's been murdered, put in a boat, and sent floating down the Thames. But the next week, there's another girl, and then a third. Corvin is dogged and principled, but he can't find the connection among these women until his friend Belinda shows him that recalling the powerlessness he felt as a child might help him understand the killer. As newspapers berate the Yard for their failures, Corvin must solve the case before London devolves into panic and the Yard is closed for good. I envision this as the first in a historical mystery series like those of Will Thomas or Anne Perry. So there you go. And then the log line. You have to distill yet again. It's like it's getting denser and denser and denser. One sentence, 15 seconds. An effective one will invite the ask, tell me more. And when you're in personal situations, and you're standing someone, and someone says, well, tell me about your book. Sometimes the log line is the one you want to use because it's quick, and the whole idea is to get them to ask, oh, that sounds cool, tell me more. In 1878 London, in the aftermath of a horrible police corruption scandal, Scotland Yard Inspector Michael Corvin must solve the case of young women who are being murdered one per week, laid out in boats and sent floating down the Thames River. There's my log line. So we've reached the end. I think I've got time for a few questions. I did want to mention, I do have a newsletter that comes out. It's only every 6 weeks. I don't believe in bothering people and cramming inboxes, but it does have writing tips, essays by other women writers, book giveaways, workshops, and that kind of thing. And these are my books and my website if you would like to visit.
Terrific, thanks. There are a couple of questions in the chat that you may have answered, but I didn't notice. Somebody, Isabel, has a question on trigger alerts. Is that enough for you to talk about? I've got to go find it here. Sorry.
Do you recommend saying trigger alerts? This is a really interesting question. Sometimes I think that you can do it without necessarily calling it a trigger alert. Like if you mention that you have 3 murdered women set in boats sent down the Thames, I mean, it's a murder mystery. It's going to be a little gritty. It's going to be a little dark. And again, I think this is personal preference. I mean, if this is something that you feel is important, then what you want to find is the agent who also feels like, hey, I'm glad that they put that in there. So, I think that if this is something that is important to you, I think it's okay to mention that. I guess, when I was doing it, again, this is before I think trigger warnings were, kind of established as something we talked about a lot. And I think that I just gave the plot synopsis for the book, and it was clear that there was, corruption, double dealing, murder, villainy, that kind of thing. So I think that's personal preference.
Okay, perfect. Ida Jones wants to know, what if the setting is not a strong part of the story?
That's fine. I mean, you want to give it, you want to give at least a sense of where it's taking place. But it's not, you don't have to make a big deal out of it. You can just, I just said in 1878 London, that's very brief. And you can kind of, it can kind of be a shorthand. If you say, in 1945 upstate New York, that's, it's enough that we're all familiar with dates and places and kind of what you're trying to convey when you give like sort of that brief little description. I think that's okay.
There are also 3 questions in the Q&A, special Q&A.
Okay.
Laura asked, if our novel blends 2 subgenres, one dominant, how should we present this?
I just put it right out there. Or like, for example, like Trace of Deceit, which was my third book. It was a historical mystery with a healthy dose of romance. That's how I describe that. Yes. Sorry. So did somebody come in and out there? Did you hear that? So, it's a historical mystery with a healthy dose of romance. That, or a contemporary thriller with a few paranormal elements. So I would kind of, give the main one and then tuck the other one in, like with a dose of, or with a, with elements, or, something like that. I would do that, but I would put it up front. I mean, I would put it out there because, someone might be really attracted to that and be like, oh, that's different. They're putting two things together that we haven't seen before. Mm-hmm.
Amy asked, when you have two protagonists, do you highlight both and their desires and arcs in section 2?
This is interesting because I actually just, when I was in Houston this past weekend, I taught a workshop where this exact same, similar workshop, but for romance writers. And for them, they often do have a man and a woman. And it was interesting because the consensus was that one story does tend to predominate, which I thought was interesting. But yeah, I think that makes writing that body paragraph a little tricky. But yes, I would say that you want to talk about maybe the most important thing to mention about the character arc is how the two come together. Like one has to learn one thing, one has to learn another thing, so they can work together to do something. For what I'm saying is, or how they're going to affect each other. I would definitely try and work that in, because if you've got two protagonists, you want to give a reason that they're working, side by side, or working against each other, or come to work with each other, or something like that. So I would say that has to be, I think that's an important piece. It's unusual. I don't usually, there's not a lot of books where there's really two protagonists who are equally strong, equal stories, unless you're doing like time slip and stuff like that.
Can you answer this one really fast? I will be attending a writers expo. Anonymous posted, is it okay to sign up to do a pitch if your novel is a work in progress to make the connection with the agent for future consideration?
Yes, I would say so, but you want to make sure that you can talk about it as a well-developed, well thought through manuscript. Even if the whole thing isn't written, you have a beginning, you have a middle, you have an end, you have an idea of the character arc. Yes, it doesn't have to be all written, but it has to be all sort of like up in your head so that you can talk about it with those elements in mind. Does that help?
I think you answered most of the questions.
Yeah, I think we're all set. I think we're good to go. Karen, this was fantastic. Thank you so much. And thank you on behalf of our emerging writers who are pitching in the next couple of weeks. Everything you said is going to be of extreme value to them. So thank you. You can see all the thank yous coming in. A note to everybody, Karen's books are, the link to buy Karen's books is in the chat right now. And just one housekeeping reminder, if you are attending Masterclass 1 in about 10 minutes or so, be sure you log off this link and log into Masterclass 1, just Masterclass 1. Tina, anything for you?
I think we're good. Don't forget to click on the link to buy Karen's books. They're fantastic.
They are.
It was a real pleasure to be here. It's so much fun.
Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Hey, take care.
You all in Masterclass 1, or some of you in Masterclass 1. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.